And get started. Jeff?
All right. Well, I would like to introduce Nancy Barbee. If you're involved in Rotary at all, you know who Nancy Barbee is already, but to know Nancy is to love her. She has been a wonderful friend to me, and she is, I'm going to put in the chat a URL to one of her bios because it would take me next 20 minutes to read everything she's done in Rotary, but she's out of the Maysville Club. She's been district governor of our district from 2009 to 2010. The list just goes on and on, but one of Nancy's passions is polio, the Polio Plus program. As far as I'm concerned, Nancy, I really wish that Rotary would just ask you to do a professional video, and on Polio Plus Day, that all of the clubs would be offered your presentation to listen to. So, you know, she has been over to India. How many times now, Nancy?
Probably, I don't know, 12, 13, 14.
Oh,
I'm not sure. I lost count after a while.
There are those of us who wish we could just have gone once, but Nancy's had this incredible opportunity. She exemplifies service above self. So with that, I am going to introduce to you Nancy Barbee.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was mighty generous, and thank you for inviting me to this club. It's great to see you guys, and I enjoy, you know, being on Zoom calls. I mean, Zoom has saved our lives, you know, in the past couple of years, so, and kept us all connected. But let me get right to it. So years ago when I was governor, well, let me back up and even go further. In 2000, I joined Rotary in 2000. And in 2001, I was fortunate enough to be invited to go to India, just on a personal mission. Just some people that I knew that were from there. And so I was invited to go for Christmas. And so my youngest son and I packed up and decided we better go because I didn't know if I'd ever have that opportunity again. So I got there, and it just so happened, you know, someone told me that you could find Rotary clubs all over the world. Well, see, being a new Rotarian, I didn't really understand that at the time. And so I looked up a Rotary club. And I found the Rotary Club of Dunbad, which is where I was. I was in they call it a small town, about 1 million people. But anyway, I found that Rotary Club. And so they invited me to go with them to see some of their projects. And that was the first time I realized that polio was still alive and well in the world. I had no idea that polio was anywhere near any place, and certainly was not here in the United States. So I had no idea about polio and even thought about it. But I saw people crawling on the streets, and I saw them, their limbs paralyzed. And I began to ask a lot of questions about polio. And so they took me to a polio corrective surgery. These Rotarians did. And I was offered to go right into the operating room, which I did. And I stood right next to the bed of a patient that was in surgery. And I watched as the orthopedic surgeons cracked the bones, opened the limb up and cut tendons, and then try to stretch that limb so that it would be straighter than it was. Not completely straight, but straighter than it was. And they put plaster cast on their legs. And I asked the orthopedic surgeon, what are you trying to do here? Because I knew that it did not appear that they would be able to use that limb anytime soon. And he said, we do this time and time again. We offer these surgeries time and time again until the patient their legs are straight enough that they can be fitted with a brace. They call them calipers, and they can stand for the very first time. And it's important in developing countries to be able to stand and to move around on your own, because people in countries, developing countries, people with any type of disability, or what we like to call differently abled bodies, are outcast, and they are put into other places that they can't be seen. Sometimes just put out on the street. Their families just are embarrassed by them. So in order to have their dignity and have hope of a future there, they are allowed to stand, can stand on on their own for the very first time. We went down the hall to another room where they did have rehabilitation and places where they were learning to walk. And we saw a young girl that was about 15 years old take her very first step. And the smile that came on her face was just amazing. Well, they took me to see other projects as well. We saw heart surgeries, and we saw eye surgeries, and all types of other projects, Rotary projects during that visit. Polio had begun to tap me on the shoulder then, because I came back and I did some research and found out that, yes, we had polio survivors here. I remember as a child taking the sugar cube. Did any of you take the sugar cube? Have the sugar cube to be vaccinated? Yeah, vaccinated. I took the sugar cube too. And all I remember about that sugar cube is that I wanted another one because it was good. And I wasn't allowed to have another one. So anyway, that was the only thing I really thought about polio. I knew my children when they were babies and young infants, they were vaccinated against polio, but other things as well. So I started thinking about polio. What can I do? What can I do for polio? What can I do to take people to India to see what I've seen? And not just polio, but see other projects that the Rotarians are working on there. But see, my club wasn't doing all that. So I had no idea what it was about. So as circumstances presented themselves, and fast forward several years, I was able to be in Rotary leadership positions, and then was selected as governor. So I went to San Diego to be trained as a governor, as all governors, incoming governors do. And I was sitting in the room, and they kept saying, there was whispers going all over the room that we have a special guest, special guest, special guest. And so finally the special guest was introduced, and it was Bill Gates. And that was the very first year that Bill Gates pledged to partner with Rotary for polio eradication. Now, I was sitting way far in the back, so he looked like he was about this tall, but I was in the room with him, you know. I felt very privileged because I was in the room. He was actually breathing the same air that I was breathing that particular day. So I was very blessed. But what struck me the most was that he pledged that to Rotary, not to another organization, but to Rotary. And that's when Rotary really slapped me on the back and said, now, are you going to do something? And right then I decided that I would start taking groups on national immunization days to eradicate polio in India, and drop those two precious drops. Will you let me share the screen?
Yeah, you should be able to share the screen.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning.
That's okay. So, you know, we've been saying for years and years and years that polio is only a plane ride away. And guess what, folks? It's back, because as you well know, it has now been detected in New York City. And it started in the counties that are above New York City, because in that area, not a lot of children are vaccinated. And so it was detected first in that area, but now it's spread to the sewer system and water system in the city itself. So I don't know at this point how many people have been contracted polio, but I do know that we all know that we know one that has contracted polio, and one is too many. So it's very important that we stick with this and make sure that it is completely eliminated from the face of the earth, because folks, polio is not curable. Once you have polio, you can't get rid of it, but it is preventable, 100% preventable by vaccinations. Of course, we partnered with the World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, of course, CDC, UNICEF, Gavi, which is a vaccine alliance. And that's a new one to us for the past maybe 3-4 years now. And of course, Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation, which polio eradication and polio is our #1 priority. for the Rotary Foundation. If you see this little boy right here, he's in a polio ward, one of the few remaining polio wards in India that they actually stay there. Most of the time they have surgery and then they leave and go back home and have to travel back and forth, which sometimes is very difficult for those patients. We are praying and hoping that the sign behind him will not be needed in the years to come, that children will not have polio and will not have to be in a polio ward as this is. And of course, what the wild polio virus is infectious. It's very infectious. It affects the nervous system and can cause paralysis all over different parts of the body, and it can even cause death. Why do we get that? Because of low immunization rates, as we were just talking about New York. Either that or poor sanitation, and then especially in places that have high population densities. And in India, it is almost a miracle that they have been free of polio for so many years, because the population is so vast, and especially in city areas and the slum areas where many people live in very close quarters. How can we stop it? We can give vaccinations to all the children under the age of 5. As you know, there are 3 types of polio: type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 2 and type 3 have been eradicated. So type 1 is the culprit, and that's the hardest one to get rid of, it seems. You may have heard of this man, Sabin. Sabin is the man who created the oral polio vaccination, and we call that OPV because it's for oral polio vaccination. And it's a mixture of a weakened form of the live strain. And when that vaccination is given, the body in the children produce antibodies in the bloodstream and in the gut. It all happens in the gut area. And it creates antibodies to that weakened virus to stop that weakened virus. It stops the total elimination or transmission of the virus, because it sort of arrests the ability of that virus to replicate itself. It's easy to give. That's what we give when we travel to India. We give the oral polio vaccine, and not on sugar cubes. We have a vial, and we take those drops and just drop 2 precious drops in the child's mouth, and as many as we can. We've always said that each dose was about 60 cents. Have you heard that before? That's not exactly true. The vial itself is about 60 cents, or sometimes less, but that vial contains about 25 doses of polio. It's really effective when you are protecting children against a wild polio vaccine, and it's very easy to give. On very rare occasions, it is very rare, but it can cause paralyzation in some form, but it's very rare because it can mutate and then it spreads again, starts spreading again. But that's 1 in a million probably of that type, but that is possible. And let's see if I can get it to go to the next one. I guess you've heard of this man too, Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk was the one who developed the vaccination, the IPV, inactivated polio vaccine. So it's not a live virus. It's a strain of all 3 of the polio types. So for this one, the body produces antibodies in the blood, but it only protects the individual. In the other one, it mutates itself or replicates itself and can be passed through secretions of the bowels from one child to another child. This one cannot. This one does not, because it's not a live virus. But it is extremely effective in protecting the individual children from polio. And it does not it cannot stop the spread of the virus in the community, but it does protect that particular child, which is, that's a big one. We here in the United States give the IPV, the inactivated polio vaccine. In developing countries, it's cheaper. Those wild polio viruses with the 2 drops is much cheaper to do and much easier for people like me to administer. I would probably have a heart attack if I had to give a child, especially one that's moving around a lot, a shot. And so it's much easier for us to give just the individual doses through the drops. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know, and thank God, which is one thing is the surveillance and the networks of the laboratory workers that go out in the wild to find out where these viruses are and how they do it. I do not know, but they can pinpoint exactly where the viruses comes from, where it was distributed, where it was detected, the first detection, where that one was came from. They found out that the boy that received, the young adult that got the virus in New York City, it was from someone that came from overseas. And we've been saying that time and time and time again, that it's only a plane ride away. And unfortunately, we've proven that. But the surveillance and the laboratory work, you hear about money, raising money for polio. Well, it's not just for those vaccines, it's for these types of things too. And thank goodness we have that, because if that had not been the case, we'd have never eradicated in India, and may not eradicate it anywhere else as well, because they can pinpoint it so precisely. All right, let's look at what happens when we go to India. So I'm going to meet all the people at the airport as soon as you arrive. And once you arrive, when you get checked in the hotel, then we start visiting Rotary projects. Polio is my way to get you to India, and that's the most important thing. But then I want you to see what other Rotarians are doing around the world too. This was a school that we visited, and a clinic is attached to it. So these young girls are able to get health care as well as an education. And it's a great project the Rotarians support financially as well as physically. They go, if you notice, many of you have probably met the gentleman that I have my hand on his shoulder is Dr. Nishal Pandey, and he's a pediatric cardiologist. He supports this girls' school, and he supports the clinic as well. So he does free medical visits to this school and helps treat the girls if there's any heart problems or anything else, actually. We also visit the South Asia office in Delhi. These are RI staff. They're RI staff members. They're just like the office in Evanston, Illinois. And we go there, but they deal with the South Asia region, not just India, but the Malaysia, Indonesia. We have several offices around the world from Rotary, and this is the one that deals with the South Asia region. If you've ever done a global grant with India, these are the people that you contact to make sure that that the project is being done. They can tell you all about it, and that's who we use to contact and talk to about our grants that are done in India. Once we've visited that office, then we see the World Health Organization. This is the India office, but they know everything that's happening in the South Asia region too about polio. If there are any cases being detected, they are on top of it all the time. They give us a little history of where it started in India, how it was eradicated, and the best practices in India that have been formed there are practices that are used for other pandemics, such as COVID. So in order to treat COVID and to get the vaccinations out there as quickly as we could once they were developed, came from best practices from India. We also visit the UNICEF office. This is one of our partners in polio eradication as well as other things. This security in this place, I've never seen anything like it. Brother, they text you at the door. They test you at the next office and the next door and the next. There's about 3 or 4 doors that you go through, and and they have got monitors everywhere. They're watching you every step of the way. I'm not sure. I've just often wondered if they thought I was a terrorist and I was bringing people there or something. I don't know. I don't know if they do that to everybody, but I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping I wasn't just paranoid, but it's a great office. They also give us updates on polio, and polio is their #1 priority now until it's eradicated. They deal with other things in UNICEF too for children, but polio is the #1, child and maternal health, the #1 for them until polio is eradicated. So that really speaks volumes too. This fellow right here, in fact, I just talked to him today. His name is Dr. Matthew Varghese. Dr. Matthew is the orthopedic surgeon that we visit. And he, as I mentioned earlier, he's one of the few, maybe now he's the only one that has polio corrective surgeries and has a ward that the people stay in. When I was talking to you earlier about these patients, a lot of them were kicked out of their homes. In fact, we met a young girl that she had surgery, and she had a couple of surgeries, and then she showed up one day. She wasn't scheduled to come back for like another 6-8 months to have another surgery. But she showed up much sooner than that. And Dr. Matthew met her at the door and said, what happened? Why are you back? Are you having any trouble or whatever? And she said, this is the only place I had to go. My mother and I live with my brother and my sister-in-law, and my brother does not want me here. He said, I'm a burden to the family. I'm an embarrassment to the family. So he kicked me out, and I have nowhere to go. This man took her in and said, by all means, you stay here. He has a bed for her. She gets food. She gets clothing, everything. She's taken care of. So she had nowhere else to go. That's why it's so important. He had another young lady that traveled many miles to see him after she had been recovered for a while wearing braces. And she came with a man and a little girl. And Dr. Matthew wasn't sure exactly who she was. She said, Dr. Matthew, you don't know me. And he said, I can't place you. She said, you operated on me many, many years ago. This is my husband who also had polio. And now we both have jobs and we have a daughter. So she was living a dignified life because of this man. I always loved to touch his hands and say, your hands are powerful. Your hands give hope to the world. Just a great guy. You may have seen him on Time Magazine, and he's been interviewed by Rotary International many times. So he's a great person. Once the Polio National Immunization Day has been announced, then we march. We march through the streets. We do a polio rally so that everybody can see that the National Immunization Day is coming. They all know it, but they're reminded with signs up around the city, broadcast on TV, signs where the booths are, and just a great big celebration with a lot of public image there. It's a lot of great fun, and people run out to touch you because they know that you're there to help their children. So it's really great fun. And then the day comes that you drop those drops. Children come from all over, by car, by horse and carriage, by motorcycle. I've seen them drive up in Mercedes. I've seen them walk with their younger siblings carrying them, with their older siblings holding their hands and bringing them. Their parents coming. Most of the children, we want them at least under 5. Some come that are over 5. We don't give them the vaccination because they've already had it. They come usually because we give out little toys or food after the vaccination, so they come for that too. So we make sure that the ones that need to be vaccinated are. But those are the drops that we give, 2 drops in each child's mouth. And then we paint their pinky purple. And this is the ink that stays about 3-4 weeks. And it's very important because we want to make sure, as I said earlier, the population is so dense that we have to make sure that every child under the age of 5 has been vaccinated. And we'll look for that marking just to make sure. And if they don't have that marking, then we'll make sure that they are vaccinated and given that marking. And there again, you see the little toys and the caps and things that this little boy is holding. And that's why they come again. They'll come around again to get that another toy. And so we make sure that, nope, this one's already been vaccinated. Thanks so much, but you need to let someone else come. On this particular vaccination trip, there are a lot of people that have polio here that are not able to come and do the vaccinations. They have post-polio syndrome, which is a phenomenon that reoccurs after many, many, many years of lying dormant, maybe. And so as an adult, older adult, sometimes in midlife, sometimes a little older, it reoccurs. And that's when they have a lot of health issues, not just paralyzation, but breathing issues and other types of issues. So they couldn't come to walk, but they're very interested in it. So we did walk, we walked for them, and we dropped drops for them and made sure that they were honored in that way. And then we held up signs to let them know, see, you were here in spirit with us. This is what we call the mop-up day. The mop-up day is the day when we walk through the villages. On the first day, we stand at one particular place. We're in a booth of some sort. But then this is when we travel. We walk through the slum areas. We walk through places that you would have no idea that people actually were living there. Sometimes the streets are so narrow that you have to go through sideways. And then all of a sudden there'll be a little opening, and there's an apartment there, and maybe 6 or 7 people are living there that are, and I would be willing to bet you that it's not as big as your bedrooms. Just tiny, tiny little place, but they live there, they cook there, they eat there, they bathe there, everything. These healthcare workers in India and other areas, Pakistan, Afghanistan, these are the true heroes, folks, because they're the ones that go door to door daily, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. They're doing it time and time again. And if you look at this young lady, you can see her, she has no iPad. It's not an iPad there. It's not a cell phone. It's all taken, the notes are taken by hand. The data that she collects is all done by hand. The markings on the wall tells us that she's in team 6 and we're with her. The polio 3 was given in that particular on that particular day. And then that's the date. This happens to be January the 3rd, 2017. So this was that particular trip. And then you see the on the other side, you see the ladies, the healthcare workers they carry those coolers. We have to make sure that vaccination is kept cool at all times. If it gets too hot, a little pink dot comes up, and we cannot use that vaccination anymore, that particular vial anymore. And you see the vials here, and the cooler. And so we have to be very careful about keeping it cool and making sure that that little red dot doesn't show up. But you see the vial is a little bit bigger than you think, and it's got a lot of vaccination, a lot of polio drops in there. And like I said, it's about 20, 25 drops. So it can do a lot of children at one swipe. Polio Plus is a grant. And so the money that is given for Polio Plus is a grant. But the Plus, there's more than just polio in that grant. So it allows for additional vaccinations like measles, mumps, rubella. And then also there are a lot of polio survivors, victims, they call them there, but survivors, we call them here. They cannot use their legs. So we provide hand tricycles for them so they can get around. Or it could be for clean water in villages, because as you well know, polio is carried through sewer systems and water systems, and it travels very quickly in those. So we provide clean water, so the sanitation is much better, as well as the clean drinking water. Can provide bed nets or other medical attention. So it's more to just Polio Plus than polio. And here, folks, this is why we want to make sure that we get rid of polio. We made a promise to the children of the world. We made a promise to the parents of the world. And you would want your child vaccinated, and you do want your child vaccinated, because we don't want any child ever to have to face these kind of disabilities. Thankfully, the government of India is providing a little bit of help for these individuals so that they're not left for begging on the street. But a lot of them still try that. It's heartbreaking to see them, because their life is is not fulfilled. And a lot of them are very, as talking to them along the streets, they have dreams and aspirations like everyone else. They're just not able to, they don't have the help to get there. What can we do? We can deliver on our promise. We can celebrate World Polio Day, which is actually tomorrow, folks. So show this video and show this presentation, not because of me, but because of the message that is being delivered here. You may want to consider, as an E-Club, joining the Polio Plus Society. That means $100 a year until polio is eradicated, for eradication of polio. And you will receive a pin. You just have to sign a pledge and give your money to the Rotary Foundation in the name of polio. Jeff is here. He can show you how to do that. He knows all about that too. So can you imagine a world without polio? I can. And I can imagine that every child will be safe, at least from this disease. We may have other things, but at least from this disease, every child would be protected. If they're protected from polio, it would be a wonderful world. I can't thank you enough for all that you do and for having me tonight. I mean, it's an honor to speak about polio. I'd welcome any of you that would like to come on a National Immunization Day. We'll resume. We haven't done them for the last couple of years, but we'll resume again in 2023. Don't know the date. I spoke to Dr. Matthew today, waiting for the Indian government to give us the date. And as soon as that happens, it's usually sometime in January or February. But as soon as that happens, it'll be announced, and you're most welcome to join us. But thank you for this tonight. And thank you for all that you do for polio and all that you will do in the future. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a question. Can you kind of talk about how the Gates Foundation does their matching for?
Sure.
We have a lot of members that are fairly new to Rotary.
Sure. So Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, their foundation, pledged $50 million. We match 50 million, and we've been able to do that. And they matched 2 for 1. So we get 50 million, then from them we get 150 million. So I mean, it takes that kind of money to do that. So every dollar that you give for polio, you're matched 2 for 1. So it makes a big difference. The World Fund also matches that donation as well. So we get a big bang for our bucks when we do it all together.
Yeah.
And Nancy, for Rotary International, in order to have the Gates Foundation match, we have to raise 50 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Big announcement, actually, just in the last couple of days. India's polio free and has been for a number of years now, since 2013, actually. But Pakistan and Afghanistan are not polio free yet. They're still on the endemic list. Pakistan was very close. They only had a few cases last year, and then they've had recent flooding, and they have about 11 million people that are homeless, and the water filtration system is not the best in the world, and so it's been spreading, and they have more cases. And also Taliban has moved up in the north again, in the SWAT area. And Afghanistan is doing fairly well. It's doing a little bit better this year than Pakistan did. And I think there's 27 cases now in Pakistan. Jeff may know better than that. I haven't kept up with that recently. But Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation announced a couple of days ago, over a period of 3 years, they're giving $1.2 billion to help eradicate polio in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So there again, I mean, he's giving it to Rotary. He is in conjunction with Rotary. And because of Rotary, he's making that commitment. And because it's that important to get rid of it. And I mean, we keep saying it time and time and time again. If it comes back full force to the United States or to another developing country, and some cases have been detected in England too, if it comes back, it will come back with a vengeance. So we've got to stop it before that happens. And so I thought that was a big statement for him to give that amount to help eradicate polio in those two countries specifically.
Yeah. And
that's-
also, people don't realize that it's a majority, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of the people giving the vaccinations, knocking door to door, are women, correct?
Most of them are, yes. And
Yeah.
they, you know, in recent years, some of them have been attacked
Yep.
and killed because it's been told that or the rumor is that is coming from the West, and they're there to sterilize your children and try to hurt your children, which, you know, it's getting better. India used to be that same way. They used to believe the same thing. And but it was, I'll be honest, it was mostly Muslim communities, but it was a lack of trust. And so, but they're not that way in India, and it's beginning to be that way more and more in Pakistan as well too. Afghanistan seems to be, the Taliban seems to be working with the polio workers, but not so much in Pakistan at the moment.
Nancy, I have a question.
Mhm.
How do you go on these trips that go to India? Does it cost the individual Rotarian any money, or
Yeah.
like how do we get involved in doing something like that if we want to take a trip?
Absolutely. Well, I take trips. There are other people that do it too. But I started doing it back in 2010. And sometimes I go twice a year, or did go twice a year. Now I just go once a year. But you contact me. I take 20 to 25 people. I limit it to that number because it's difficult enough to get around in India on a bus. But once that happens, yes, it does cost the individual Rotarians. Rotary does not pay for a thing. This is not really a Rotary project per se. This is a individual project. Rotarians go mostly. So I have taken other people that are not in Rotary, and I've taken Rotaractors, I've taken Interactors as well. So but contact me. It's usually about when I started doing that, I have a agent in India that I give him the itinerary and tell him where we want to go and what we're going to do. I'm in contact with Rotarians that also make sure that we're in the right place at the right time, because the Rotarians are the ones that help us with get to the right place as far as the NID goes. And so once that occurs, it's about anywhere from $3,000 to $3,500, depending on where we go in country. That does not include your cost to getting there. And that's your responsibility to get you there and get you a visa. And I show you how to do all that. Then once that's there, you just tell me when you arrive. I'll give you a date and say, okay, arrive on January the 23rd, say. Arrive sometime that day. So we'll pick you up at the airport, take you to I'm right there to meet you. I don't care what time it is, night or day, you're there. I'm there to meet you and greet you as you come into India off out of the airport. And then we whisk you away to the hotels to get checked in and relaxed. And then the next day we get started. Does that answer your question, Pat?
Sure does.
Okay.
I was looking for a free trip.
I wish, and it's not free to me either. No, this is, like I said, this is not a Rotary trip. I have had some people that have been sponsored by their district and gotten some money from their district or their club, but my club doesn't do that for me, and I don't expect them to, and neither does the district. So I don't know. I don't know how that happens exactly, but some have done that. I've heard.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I had a quick question about the commitment that the foundation, Gates Foundation just made. So that's on top of what they were matching?
Correct. That's a
Wow.
because they're targeting Pakistan and Afghanistan because those are the endemic countries now. So that's where they're targeting. So that money will go directly for polio eradication in those two countries.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Do we have any other questions for Nancy?
Yes, and I'm probably gonna stir up a little bit of stuff, but that's okay.
That's
Do
okay.
you want to stop the recording? No.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, this all has to do with polio. So our district is looking at putting together like a polio day for each of the clubs. And of course, as a virtual club, we're spread all over the place. But what are you looking for as far as like having the club do some sort of polio event?
I'm not involved in that actually. So I do
Okay.
know that that came from the zone. The zone level when we were in Baltimore for our institute, the zone said for every the district, each district can choose one club that did the best polio project during that. It didn't have to be that day. It could be another day. It could be a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. I'm not too sure, Pat, but whatever. I don't know what the criteria are actually of projects or what exactly is going on. I'm sorry to be so vague, but I really don't know. Anyway, that particular club will be chosen from the district, and then the zone will give them a Paul Harris Society for their efforts.
Wow.
What the projects are supposed to be? No, it could be anything, I think.
Right. Well, you know what I did a couple years ago, and this would be easy for a virtual club to do, that's spread out, is we did a Pints for Polio Day. Jeff,
Yeah.
I think, were you involved in that discussion? I'm not sure if you were or not, but we did a Pints for Polio, and I actually did it at Shortwave Brewery right there in
Oh.
Newport.
Cool.
And actually, I think his name is Daniel Shortway. I think he's with the Newport Rotary Club, matter of fact. But what I did was I put up I had a banner that I put up for polio, and basically everybody who bought a beer on that evening, they donated $1 to polio. I think we raised like $300 for the evening.
Not bad at all.
And I know Colorado has Oscar Blues. I'm forced to go there whenever I go to Colorado. But we have lots of little microbreweries, and that's nothing for 1 or 2 people to set up. Is a Pints for Polio night. And actually they have, if you Google Pints for Polio, they have like really good logos that have like pint glasses that have a Rotary logo on them. And that might be something to do. Is like we could, with our club, is just do a Pints for Polio and have individuals all over the world, really.
I
Put
think
together an evening like that, and it's nothing to do, really.
I think that's a great idea, and you could just, each one of you that participated in that in your local area could do a little video and ask the people there, what do you think about this? Are you having a good time or something? Just make a little,
Right.
30-second video or something.
Well, I did one here, and then Lori did one down in Wilmington at the same time, and we actually broadcast it to each other, and it was kind of a fun thing to do. But like I said, it doesn't take a lot of manpower.
No, and you can even do with all of you in different places. You could even do a Facebook Live type thing.
That's right. And you know what? It's a good excuse to drink beer.
Hey,
There you go. You have a reason.
hey.
You tell the wife, we're doing this for a cause there, honey.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy. We're over our time, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the meeting, and then we can stop the recording and we can continue to chat if we want to. So stop the recording.